to the channel, guys. Today's video we're going to be fixing common problems and failures on this particular 2005 Chevy Cavalier with the good old 2.2 4-cylinder. Parts I got laid out. I got intake gaskets because I want to pull the intake off anyways, because the gaskets are probably old and brittle and just failed. I believe this comes with the throttle body gasket, I hope. And we have the famous crank sensor, because I'm going to replace that as well. SU1072, their last brand. And then I have the oil pressure switch, which is what the problem is I have. PS449. It is leaking. Some of them you can kind of see down in that little straight down to the block, but mine's definitely leaking really bad. So we're going to pull the intake here off. Got a Phillips head for that clamp. Phillips head. Take this hose off. Take this out. Unplug this connector for your air intake temperature sensor. Just like that. And to get the intake off, there's a little screw straight inside back there. My finger is straight in. It's a little clamp just like this. You should see it. And we'll pull the whole intake piece off. Alright, now that's out of the way, I'm going to take the throttle body off, because I believe there is a middle 10mm bolt you got to get to for the intake. I know there's one there, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to get off. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts for the throttle body. Gotta undo the connectors. There is some things down here to remove. You got the crossover pipe bracket, 10 here, 10 there. And then we'll disconnect that. Get the wiring harness out of the way. And I think what I'm going to do is leave the, well, got to disconnect the cables that go to the throttle body, like your throttle cable and such. But I believe what I'm going to do is just take the throttle body and the bracket assembly and just move it all around together without having to disconnect all that. Same size. There we go. Lay that to the side. Same size. same, and the same. There's a little line right here you got to disconnect because of the it goes to your purge valve solenoid that's over here on top of the power steering pump. It's kind of hard to show you, but the little tab right here, you want to pull this way and push down at the same time. Push down, slide this tab that sticks out this way, and then it'll pop right off. You gotta be careful, it's plastic. All the bolts should be out of the intake. If not, alright, so I missed 2 or 3 more, so there's 7 bolts total for the intake. 1 more bolt and 2 nuts, the middle one, and then there's 2 outer nuts, one on that side and one on this side. It's loose now. There's a bracket over here for the old dipstick straight down. You have to remove. It's another 10. Removes this guy for the dipstick. Intake should be loose. Map sensor needs to be unplugged. It's one last thing. Pull it back. Bunch of stuff in the way. You gotta pry this guy outward at the same time. I'm trying to get these off the studs. Alright, one last thing I forgot. It's this little guy right here. The hose that goes to the intake. There's a little clip. Once I pull this off, you'll be able to see it. Right there. This little clip right here locks in. While it's on the intake, if you spin the hose around, you'll see it in this direction. See if I can get some better light on this. So many comments that says, I couldn't see that. Upside down, just like this. Take a screwdriver, flathead, and what you want to do is pretty much squeeze those little tabs inward. Whatever side you can get to, squeeze the little tab inward and push out. And it'll pop that little tab right out just like it did right here. Once it's done, you can probably just snap it back in and it'll lock itself back on when I pull it back, push it back onto the intake. Now that that's out of the way, the intake is free. It should come off. Alright, next little small thing to disconnect or to get off the intake. The very bottom, right hand side, there's this little guy right there. That little stud that sticks out, the plastic clip, it locks into the bottom right here. Only way to get it out is take these, go behind it, and pry it outward. You could also use a set of things like this to get in behind there and pry it out. Use these for clips, stuff like this. And it pops the clips out. Does the same thing for those. Other than that, this intake is free. Just like so. Alright. Right here's your oil pressure switch. The crank sensor I'm going to replace is right beside of it, but I want to get this out of the way first. You got to replace it anyway. You don't need a special socket for it. Or you could probably get in there with a crescent wrench or something, adjustable wrench. But this is probably the best thing to use, and it's not that expensive. Special made for these. Goes right on because of the threads. Just like that. It's a 3/8 ratchet right into it. Alright, should be loose enough. Get it out by hand. Some oil is going to come out of there, but shouldn't be much. It's nothing to worry about. No, or not. This one has a little washer, and the new one does too. Matches the new one. Pretty much looks the same. So go ahead and put that in, but like I said, I want to get to that crank sensor beside of it. It takes a 10mm right there on top to get that guy out. Bolts out. Went ahead and plugged this off with a cap, and I took a wire brush before taking that sensor out and scrub around in there. You could use a toothbrush, that should work too. Maybe get some brake cleaner and carpet cleaner, spray in there with a brush. Kind of clean it up a little bit because there's a lot of debris and a lot of dirt, and you don't want that inside your engine block when you go to take that sensor out. Could cause problems of putting the sensor back in or pinching the O-ring and then causing an oil leak right in that little spot. And you may think that it's the oil pressure switch if you didn't replace yours. So I went ahead and cleaned the knock sensor off because it's right beside of it. So that way if I ever had to replace it again, I could pull the starter off and get right to it from the bottom half. But intake was much easier than pulling the starter. Should come right out. Just like so. And flip around and unplug it. It has a little bit of oil in the tip end of the sensor, so it could be why I've got a problem of intermittent to where the car doesn't really want to start when it's hot. And it's very random. But yeah, this one's a lot cleaner. So I'm going to take some electrical cleaner, spray both connectors, one for the crank and the one for the oil pressure switch, because they both have a little bit of oil inside the connector. So I want a good connection. I don't want to have problems with that. Alright, so you just put it right back in like you did, or took it out, and snug it down. Don't go crazy because you can break it because it's plastic. It's just a 10mm anyway, and you don't want to break that bolt off. As long as it's tight and snug, that's all you need. This one doesn't need anything either. It just goes right in. Thread it in with your hand first. And with the socket on it. I go to it snug, and that's good enough. Put the connector back on it. They're cleaner. That connector's really worn out. I should get another one, but probably should be all right. And now we're going to clean the surfaces up of the intake with some brake cleaner, carb cleaner, and a good rag. And then we'll put the new seals in the intake. throttle body seal. These little seals come out with a flathead. It's really easy. And pop the new ones in. It's just that simple. Flathead in between the seal. These are pretty brittle. They're old. If I had to guess, probably factory. I doubt this intake's ever been pulled off. This car has 321,000 miles. Yeah, and that seal just broke. Take the little guy in the middle out. Alright, so this is the old one that goes in the middle. You want to take the one out of the package that has the same ribs. See these little indentions on the outside that stick outward? You want to pick that one because that's exactly what your old one has. So this little purple one, and you don't need oil, nothing. You want all this clean and dried out. Spray it down with brake cleaner, carb cleaner. And then pop the little seals back in their little spot. I'm going to say already that I'm noticing a difference, that these seals are a lot thicker than those. So hopefully this is probably the issue. Surfaces are prepped and cleaned. So time to put the intake back on. Alright, intake's back on. It was a little bit of a hassle, but not too bad. The thing is, when you bring the intake in, you want to kind of go in at an angle, so this side goes downward, in, and then back in that way. You're going to fight with it a little bit. My camera is dying, so I can't really get much of the video, but it hits the oil filter, and the back part of the intake is thick, so it wants to hit the upper of the head. So you've got to kind of get it down in there and then back up under the lip. The intake, this piece needs to go under the head. There's a thick part that sticks out at the very back. Anyway, it's all put on. It is down tight and snug. You don't want to crank it down. You just want it snug and tight. That's it. It's aluminum head, aluminum bolts. They're very tiny, very coarse thread. You don't want to break those off into the head. So the new throttle body gasket is on. And all the brackets and stuff are back in like this should be down here. There's 2 bolts down there, this one and this one, and then you've got that guy right there for the dipstick. So take the throttle body, need to make sure that it's not. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and clean that really quick. A little dirty. And then we'll throw that back on. Alright, throttle body's back on. Snug, tight, just like the rest of it is. Plug that back in. Push this safety connector back in place. It's basically just so the connector can't fly off, is all that's for. And then you're out of our control. Just like so. And now that everything's back in, I can still start it like this. It's not going to hurt it. Yeah, the air temperature sensor is not plugged in, but it will run. Might throw a code for that, but it's not a big deal. I don't care. I just want to make sure that crank sensor and oil pressure switch and all that stuff is good before putting the intake tube on, because I can't see down in there. So I'm going to fire it up. Wow, fires right up. Usually it does a couple of revolutions before firing up. The service light's on because I have the DLR or DLA, whatever, relay out because I have LED headlights. You can't have that in. The DRL relay, yeah. When you have LEDs, because it will make the lights flicker because it's a day running lights. Other than that, there's no service light or anything else on. Running a lot smoother. Yeah, a lot smoother. Oh yeah, a lot better. Yeah, a lot better. Alright, well, I call that a fix. And car seems to be running better. Time will tell. You need to drive it, at least 50 miles, let the computer kind of recuperate, so to speak. It's kind of like a drive cycle is what they call it. And 50 to 100 miles after doing this work, because you want to unplug the battery, plug it back up so the computer's reset, just in case, with the intake and everything like it was, just in case there's a leak there. So anyway, it's pretty much fixed. I call that a fix. It's pretty much how you replace your intake gaskets and your oil pressure switch and your crank sensor on your 2005 Chevy Cavalier, or the Saturn Vue, and the Pontiac Grand Dam, I believe, had the same engine. Maybe a little setup a little different, but pretty much the same setup. Like, share, subscribe, comment below, let me know what you think, and hope this helps out for anybody that's having problems with one of these cars or SUVs that has this engine in it. Thanks for watching. I will catch you guys later in the next one. Thanks.